another manuscript that I submitted earlier this week to the Royal BC Museum on Emily Carr. It's called Unvarnished, Autobiographical Sketches by Emily Carr. So it's some of her unpublished writings. So I'm finally now free of Emily Carr, and I'm quite glad to take up Sophie Pemberton again, because she, as I said, she's one of those unfinished businesses in my research list. So for those of you who may be newer to Victoria and don't recognize the name Pemberton Road, Sophie Pemberton grew up. I was born in Victoria, had her early years here. She was the third daughter of six children, or sorry, the third child of six children born to Joseph Despard Pemberton, who was the colonial surveyor, brought out when Vancouver Island was just a colony to survey the areas that would be developed as urban. And his wife, Teresa Gratoff, who they were both from England. Pemberton was actually Irish by birth, but they came out to the colony and raised their family here. They ended up with a large tract of land. Almost all of Oak Bay was originally Pemberton land. And over the years, they divided it, giving small portions to community endeavors, like the Oak Bay Golf Club was given to Pemberton, and Norfolk School property, that sort of thing, as well as their own families. So Sophie came from a very privileged background, but as Yvonne mentioned, she and Emily Carr and the third artist, Teresa Wild, were little girls growing up in this small town of Victoria, and they were born within 2 years of each other. They all went to the same church. They did a lot of the same little local schooling, and they all had ambitions as an artist. And each of these little girls went in completely different directions, partly as a result of their financial abilities, partly as a result of familial support or not, and partly because of just life circumstances. So they're all an interesting contrast. For years, feminist art historians in particular always used Emily Carr as an example of a woman who didn't marry, and because of that, she had great success as an artist. And they used Sophie Pemberton as the foil. This is a woman who had a budding career, internationally accepted, and then she married and it all died. But I've always not liked that story and thought it was too simplistic, and really want to bring out Sophie Pemberton's entire life, and to try and understand how the trajectory of her artistic career, her public artistic career, changed, and maybe why it changed, and a little bit about the times in which she was living and the circumstances. So that's my project. My short-term goal is I have a manuscript due at the end of June to the Art Canada Institute, which publishes online and limited print publications about Canadian artists. So if you go and if you don't know about this organization, it's quite wonderful. You can go online and read publications about many Canadian artists. So I'm really glad that Sophie Pemberton will be in that lineup. And it's also preparatory to conversations I've been having with the art gallery here about doing a show on Pemberton, a show that I really would love to have travel. And so it's we're sort of in the mix and in the midst of uncertainty with COVID and funding and all that sort of thing, but it's very much, that's my trajectory. So can we do the next slide, please, Caroline? There you go. So this is kind of my do list. So I've been building up this life chronology, and it's now 182 pages. of what she did in this month, this year, the next month, and how many things, all the references I found in newspapers, all of the information from all of the letters that exist that she wrote and others wrote to her, trying to find the nuances in her life and to really get an idea so I can move beyond the sort of cliche things. One of the challenges of this project is that the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria did a lovely exhibit in, I think it was 1978, curated by Nick Tuelli. And there was a small catalog about Sophie Pemberton that came out at the time. And that has become the foundational resource for Sophie Pemberton. And although it was great in its time, it's really lacking depth today for me. So what I'm doing is I'm fighting all the way against all the quotes that everybody ever uses when they reference Sophie in any of their writings. They're always referencing this catalog, and sometimes it's not right. So it was great in its time. It was really important for starting the research for me now, but I'm really hoping that we get beyond that view. So what I'm doing is I'm finding clues in the records, and my training is as an archivist. And so luckily for me, the BC Archives is right here, although it's been difficult to access the last 8 or 9 months. But a lot of Pemberton family records are there. And there is a lovely collection of Sophie's letters and diaries in the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria's collection as well. So between the two of them, that's where most of the documentation has been coming from. So establishing context for her life and times by going through her diaries and the letters and referencing the things that people talk about, I'm able to sort of situate Sophie within things that were going on in the world and in Canada and in England and France, where she lived. Part of the challenge of understanding Sophie Pemberton is that she lived overseas for more than half of her life. So what we know of her is often bounded by the paintings that are in the public collections in Canada. And so you don't really get beyond where her career was internationally. So by reading the diaries and letters and knowing where she went and who she interacted with, I'm building up this idea of who she was. And then of course, every time she mentions somebody, then I start Googling that person and trying to see if they left any diaries or letters that might cross-reference. So it's there's a lot of rabbit holes that I've been going down, but I think I'm finished most of the major rabbit holes and it's writing time now. So tracing her artworks is the other challenge, because there are 4 institutions that I've found that hold paintings by Sophie Pemberton: the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria, the BC Archives, which is now the part of the Royal BC Museum, the Vancouver Art Gallery, and the Art Gallery of Hamilton. That's it. So when scholars are wanting to, include an Emily, or sorry, I keep saying Emily Carr, Sophie Pemberton painting in an exhibit, they find the same paintings in these 4 institutions. There are tremendous numbers of Pemberton paintings in private collections, and many, many in Pemberton family descendants. So one of the things I haven't done yet, and I keep telling myself it's probably about time, is to do the old school letter to the editor and say, hi, here I am. I'm doing research on Sophie Pemberton, and I would really love it if you could share anything you know about her, or if you have paintings in your collection, because it's really important when researching and when curating to be able to introduce new information and new images, and maybe also steer those paintings towards public institutions. So the writing and curating is what's on my plate now. So let's go to the next slide that doesn't have a lot of words on it. So what I've done with these slides is trying to show you some of the original materials that I'm working with at the same time, just to give you a sense of the richness And thank goodness people in families kept things, and they had a sense of their own self, and they had a sense of the people in their world as you know, having some significance for family and others. So in various collections, I'm finding little bits and pieces about Sophie Pemberton. One of the best resources is something that's in a family member's hand, and the art gallery has an old photocopy of it. It's an old scrapbook that she called her glory book. And in it, she, at some point in her life, she glued all sorts of pieces of information about her whole artistic career. So it includes old photographs, a few letters, a lot of things like this certificate that she got from Mrs. Cridge's school, the Reformed Episcopal School, honorable mention for her artwork. When she was, what, she was 1882, she was quite young. So, I mean, she had a sense of pride in herself, and she assembled this glory book, which is absolutely amazing. So Sophie, from this family of a certain amount of financial means, spent a lot of time in England, back and forth. The family seemed to travel to England. Some of her younger siblings were born there, and back and forth again. And she did some schooling in England, and then she started going to art school. And she registered first at Mr. Cope's art school in London, and then from there she went to the Clapham Art School, and then the Westminster School of Art. And she was operating in this environment in London at the same time that Carr and Wilde were there. And there's just, you know, little tangential hooks where they're aware of each other, but that's about it. So, so anyway, she established herself as an artist in England, and did all of her South Kensington examinations. And by the time of 1897, she starts exhibiting. And this glory book has all she subscribed to Debrett's, which was a clipping service. So anytime you were mentioned in the newspaper, somebody would clip it out, and you would end up with all these little tiny thin little clippings. And so going through all of these little clippings that are painstakingly glued into this book, I've been able to get a sense of her exhibition history in England, and it was absolutely tremendous. And a lot of these paintings, I mean, there are catalogs for the exhibitions. She was selling them, they had a price, and they've disappeared. So I think, and again, COVID interrupted my plans to spend a lot of time in the UK this last year and do that search and find out where these paintings are and see if I can bring them to light. So she had quite a stellar beginning in England. So let's go to the next slide. So she launched her professional career with this painting, Daffodils, which is at in the BC Archives collection, followed by a painting in the art gallery collection, Little Boy Blue. So she was, the paintings were well received. The public seemed to take her as a serious artist, and she established a studio for herself. She actually rented one of several studios in a complex called the Stanley Studios in Chelsea in London. And amongst the other artists in this group were several women that I've been tracing that I think had important influence for her. One of them was a Swedish artist by the name of Anna Nordgren. And she was almost like a mother figure, I think, for Sophie, but a very competent artist. She founded a women's art club called the 91 Art Club. And it was quite groundbreaking in terms of, you know, its focus on women and art, and the seriousness of women presenting their art as professionals. Whoops, we move forward. Back again. Thank you. One of the other artists that she met was a young woman by the name of Constance Gore-Booth, who was Irish. And Constance Gore-Booth later married and became Countess Markovitz. She became very active in the Irish independence movement. She was jailed for her time, working for Ireland's independence, and she is a national hero in Ireland. Her family home, Lissadell, just outside Sligo in Ireland, is a place I've been to a couple of times, and Sophie went there in 1897 and hobnobbed with Yeats and all of the people that were in that circle. So this is just one example of a connection in art school that has real life understanding for us today, because Constance Gore-Booth went on to, give up art, but became this rebel. If you don't know about her, Markovitz was the name she was most known under, and so Sophie kept in touch with Con Gore-Booth, as she knew her first, for many, many years. So it's those kinds of connections that I'm trying to work into this bigger story of how Sophie fits overseas, internationally, and the connections that she had and she maintained throughout her life. Next slide, please. So characteristic of Sophie Pemberton, as opposed to Carr or Wilde, is a tremendous amount of back and forth between England and Canada. So Sophie came back a lot. The family funding enabled her to go back and forth. So she kept reconnecting with family here, and then she would head back to England. Part of it was grounded in issues of health, and I'm still working on what those are. But she was very much bonded. This is pictures of her mother and one of her sisters, both one at Couch and one at Gordon Head. Next slide. So she moves to Paris to attend the Academy, and I apologize, I couldn't get any of the French accents on my screen when I was trying to edit the names, sorry. The Académie Julian in Paris, and she was there on and off for from 1898 to 1904. She spent a lot of time, going back to England, going back to Canada, going to Rome, but she was there for this time. And while I was in France doing research for the Carr exhibit, I went to the Paris National Archives, where the records of the Académie Julian are there, and I was able to find Sophie's name on the list of artists registered for particular classes. And also I went through a whole stacks and stacks of letters that went to Madame Julian, who I knew was a particular friend of Sophie, that didn't have an index. So I spent almost one day just going through these letters, and I found a series of correspondence between the two of them. So it's, it's really obscure kind of connections that you work on when you're developing new information about an artist. But following her time in Paris is pretty cool. I wish my French was better than it is. But while she was at the Académie Julian, let's do the next slide. She was awarded the Le Prix Julien in 1899 for a portrait completed in the studio, and the clipping on the left of your screen shows that portrait. And I've never seen it before. I don't know where it is, whether the Academy kept it, whether it went into a private collection in Paris somewhere. Would love to know, but the art gallery has the medal that she received, the gold medal. So that's in the collection here. So there's that link, that very important link to one of her most early recognitions. Now, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but there's a little newspaper clipping at the very bottom on the left, and it lists her winning and all of the honorable mentions and the other members of the class. And so you can see Constance Gorbooth is there. Also another woman, it says Mademoiselle Cameron, and this was Lily Cameron, who is the daughter of one of the prime ministers of Canada, who is also a member of her, inner circle in Paris. Okay, next slide. Okay, now, so this is, as John mentioned, this is the art gallery's portrait of Bibi Lapouré. What she met this vagabond kind of colorful character coming out of Whistler's atelier one evening, and I'm not sure how they actually decided that she would like to use him as a subject, but they made an arrangement, and which Sophie found out instantly was quite scandalous, and Madame Julienne insisted on being there while this fellow came to her studio to pose, because it was not seemly that an unmarried woman would be present alone. So she did a series of sketches. The art gallery has a charcoal sketch. There are others known to exist of him while she's trying to figure out the best pose for him. So she ends up doing this painting, and I am so delighted that the art gallery fundraising was able to have this painting and the frame restored. The before and after photographs are quite dramatic, but when you see the painting hung now as it is in the mansion, it's quite tremendous. And one of the things, there were two things that really bothered me about the painting beforehand was the yellowness in the face and the hands, and that's all gone now. And also just that it's so black, and now it's not so black. You can see what he's wearing and his legs and the hat on his knee and a bit of color. So it's the painting is, and the frame were in pretty poor shape, and now they're wonderful. So this painting was hung on the line at the Paris Salon, and later the Royal Academy. It went back and forth between England and France and also Canada. So it's, it's a fairly large painting, and it always amazes me that the artists, they chug these paintings back and forth, and conservator's nightmare. But anyway, when Sophie did finally return to Victoria, this was one of the paintings she brought with her. Next slide, please. This is the one painting owned by the Art Gallery of Hamilton, and keep in mind its composition, because later on we'll be seeing a photograph that shows it. So she was trained as a portraitist. She was very skilled in watercolor, landscape. She also did still life subject matter. So she seemed to have an incredible talent, and wanted very seriously to be considered as a professional artist. And because when she exhibited her paintings, they were always listed with prices. She wasn't just painting, as a dilettante, or painting because she had some skill and had no intention of actually diffusing her painting. Her object was to sell and to get her work out there. Next slide, please. So here's some a lovely sketch that's on the gorge in Victoria on one of her trips back, just to show you that she's competent in a number of different media, and her sort of impressionist interpretation of the landscape. Next slide, please. So from Paris, she went to Rome and then back again to Victoria. And on the right, you can see one page of a letter. And again, just a little diversion, I'd read this letter, transcribed this letter, seen this letter in context with all the letters before and after, and always kind of wondered about this artist. And then I was offered the opportunity to look at a painting from a private collection by Sophie. And it was a head and shoulders portrait of a man. And on the back of it, it said Kruger. And so I thought, okay, well, let's just Google Kruger as an artist. And I was able to narrow it down to an artist who was at the Académie Julienne at the same time as Emily, who was from Belarus. And when you go and you research Kruger, who is now a national artist, most of his paintings, were destroyed in the war, but he is very much, an important figure. Did a lot of self-portraits, and he was in Rome. This is the guy. This is another connection to people that she knew. I don't know if she ever kept in touch with him, but he was in Paris at the same institution. They connected somehow in Rome, and I've now been able to figure out. So I have another sort of lead, maybe in Belarus. But yeah, so anyway, next slide. So, and this is where everything changes. She comes back to Victoria in 1904, and in September the next year, she marries Canon Beanlands, who was an Anglican minister, and he was a widower. His wife had died a few years previous. They had 4 young children. Sophie became a stepmother, and they lived in the rectory on Burdett Street. And these are photographs of the interior of the rectory. And you can see that Sophie has brought all of her paintings with her. And above the open book, Livre Vert, the large painting on the right-hand side, you can see that Art Gallery of Hamilton chrysanthemums painting that she's brought back as well. So Sophie never had children. I'm not sure what the issues were. She was hospitalized quite seriously after her marriage for things gynecological. I'm not sure what that meant. Whether there were issues with conception or what, but she was unable and did not have children, and so she inherited these 4 young children and was expected to take on the role of a mother. And think about it. you can't be an artist and be this instant mother at the same time. But what happened right after their marriage is that Beanland's eldest daughter, who was in Ontario training to be a nurse, suffered a horrible accident. She was severely burned. He fled to Ontario to be at her side. She was married at the last minute to her fiance, and she died. And just this whole sort of family tragedy was unrolling at the same time as Sophie was working on a huge exhibition in London of her British Columbia landscapes. So this woman was completely torn apart emotionally, and as well as just the time in her day to curate and organize this show in London from Victoria, deal with stepchildren, deal with family tragedy, and try to paint. It was this whole sort of like stop, can't do it all moment. Next slide, please. But she does do painting while she's here. So this is 1907, and this is in a private collection just outside Seattle. And the people who have this walked into a private home in Wales, and they looked over the mantelpiece and said, "Oh, that looks like Mount Baker." And they found it in a private collection. And it was for sale in Victoria. it was sold in Victoria, and the newspaper article says to a gentleman who was taking it back to the old country. But it was reserved for show at the Doré Gallery in London. So these people persuaded the owners that they had to have it, brought it back, have it fully conserved, and it's a large landscape. It's quite magnificent. Next slide, please. So here's a picture of Sophie on the right with Canon Beanlands beside her. And I don't know, I just find this a very awkward photograph. And I don't know whether I start reading too much into things about relationships and class and privilege and being strapped in circumstances that you can't get out of. But they're reading between the lines in Sophie's letters to her sister in particular, you can see that there are things very wrong between the two of them. Some of it had to do with the fact that he didn't discipline his children, and she found them to be quite ill-behaved and rude. The youngest son was a darling and was Sophie's, she was the child, he was the child that she would have wanted, and they were very, very close. The art gallery has a portrait called Paul Beanlands. Oops, I'm sorry. And this is the young boy. But between the two, it was not an easy marriage. And as part of my chronology, what I've been doing is, documenting where she was in what month and what year. And it's amazing how many times she is on the European tour. She's back in Victoria. She's doing all of these things without Beanlands. So she's trying within the restrictions of what was considered acceptable at the time to maintain her independence and follow her dream. Next slide, please. So in 1909, she comes back again. I'm not sure how many of you know that at the Jubilee Hospital, the Royal Jubilee Hospital, there's a Pemberton Operating Theatre and the Pemberton Chapel, which were funded, of course, by the family. The operating theatre was given when Joseph Pemberton died in 1893, he left money in his estate for an operating theatre. And then later on, his widow contributed money towards a chapel. And Sophie came back and she painted this mural in the chapel. And I've uncovered now that she didn't do it alone. She did it with an artist that, if you please let me know if you know anything about this artist by the name of Anne. Oh God, I'm having a senior's moment. Oh, it'll come to me. She came from England with Sophie to Victoria to help her do this mural. I mean, it was quite high up. It was sort of a logistical issue. And then from there, this artist went to Vancouver, and she was the artist who took over Emily Carr's studio when Carr went to France. So it's all these connections. But this is a very, it's a very public piece of art. And yes, it makes sense that it's the Pemberton Chapel and that a Pemberton artist, should decorate it. This is her handwriting on the bottom as well. It's very charming. It's very different than anything else I've seen by Sophie Pemberton. Next slide. So again, she goes back and forth. Her mother becomes a bit of a problem. Her father died unexpectedly while galloping his horse across his land in Oak Bay in 1893, had a heart attack and died. The widow becomes increasingly needful of her daughters, and at some point, the daughters here in Victoria ship her over to be with Sophie, and so they spent some time in England and in here and traveling with her mother for 6 months at a time. Like, these are just not little 2-week jaunts. They're substantial periods of time where she is traveling and she is sketching and she's writing letters home, thank goodness, and they've kept. So you can see the little glimpse of what's going on here in the letter she's writing to her sister. She's talking about her husband. His weakness makes me angry. How I can love him apart from his weakness. But if he cares for me, you will have to suffer a little for his love. It's not enough to overcome his repugnance to criticize or scold the girls. And it kind of goes on from there. So developing into this complex situation where you have someone who's defining herself as an artist in a social and personal situation that is very difficult to extract herself from. Next slide. So the Beanlands move, they moved initially into his sister's house, and Sophie wasn't having any of that. And so they ended up buying this house in Kent, and this is not their house. This is their neighbor's house. They lived next door to the Sackville West. So, most people know Vita Sackville West, author, fabulously flamboyant personality, mover and shaker in the arts movement. Well, her mother, Victoria Sackville West, who was a little bit older than was Sophie, was resident at Knoll House, their neighbors at the time that the Beanlands lived there, and they developed a relationship. And in Sophie's diaries, for months on end, she records going to Knoll House to paint furniture. So, like, what is she doing? She's painting furniture, she's decorating rooms. And so this becomes Sophie's outlet. She starts working inside her own house, inside the houses of friends, and she does whole themed rooms. She does kind of Arabian Nights rooms, and she paints furniture. And this eventually moves into a paying career, so to speak. She paints decorative pieces and domestic pieces that are sold in shops in London. And Lady Sackville West's diaries are at the University of Indiana. And during this COVID times, I contacted them and they said, oh, well, what we can do is we can set you up a time and the archivist will hold the diary and go from page to page and you can take photographs with your camera. So of course, there were, I had to shortlist what I was interested in, but that's what happened. I had this pair of white gloves on my screen, turning the pages in the diary while I took photographs. And it was just one of those lovely, lovely, generous ways of sharing in hard times. But anyway, so I'm on this trail here as well. So Sophie has some kind of an accident, and I'm not sure when it happened, but when Beanlands dies in September 1917, she is not at a mourner at the funeral. She's not there at all. His children are there. Her sister-in-law is there. Other people connected, but she's not there, and it's not remarked upon either, as though because she was unwell, she was unable to attend. She just is not listed. So I don't know. She had a fall and she was recuperating, became an invalid. Whether that happened before or after his death, it was all within a 4-month period, and I'm not sure. So anyway, next slide. So I just wanted to show you some pictures of her glory book. These are the kinds of things that she spent some time hoarding these. All these clippings, they're all the references to reviews or notices about her paintings. It's many hundreds of pages, this book, and it's a researcher's dream to find something like this. Next slide. I've got a couple of slides just to show you some of her diaries and the kinds of entries she made. Sometimes The diaries are often 4 or 5 years on a day to a page. So January 1st, 1900, 1901, 1902, 03, 04 are all on one page, and they're just little slices of it's a little pocket diary. So what you choose to write about on a particular day is very curated. You decide what it is you want to write. Your day may have had many, many things happening in it, but your space in the diary is very small. So the decision making about what to write about, and then the fact that you could compare each year but on a single page is an interesting opportunity to see what was important to her. And in some cases she talks about going to a movie. In other cases it's all about friends and artistic events. So it's unraveling this connection of patronage in England that I'm really interested in, because I'm still on the quest for these paintings, and I'm sure they're in collections, just not public collections in the UK. Next slide. So just a few. The pen in there, or the pencil in there, gives you a sense of the scale. The diaries that the art gallery holds are fabulous, but they're not all of them. So they all haven't survived through time. And so you get these tantalizing gaps for 10 or 12 years in between diaries, and sometimes I'm able to fill it in through correspondence. But it's I want to do her justice in my research. I don't want to end up just with the same cliche about, well, she married and that was the end of her career, because I don't think it was. And so that's where I'm focusing my energies now. Next slide. This is another one from the art gallery collection. Just in Beanland's dies in September 1917. Sophie becomes an invalid. She works with Lady Sackville West doing all of this painting of furniture and whatnot. And then she meets a man. And by all accounts, she falls madly in love. He, like Beanlands, is older than her, but he's, I think Nick Toole called him a rootin' shootin' kind of a man. He loved to fish, he loved to shoot, he loved to hike. He did all those things that, Sophie didn't do. And she talks to her sister in a letter about having to trade all of her silks for tweeds. And so she, she marries for love this guy that, comes from a completely different background. But in 1920, after their marriage, they embark on this world cruise, and they come to Victoria and they live here for quite some time. There's a lot of drama connected with the estate of the Pembertons, and tension between Sophie's oldest brother, who was controlling the purse strings for the sisters. So Sophie and her husband and her sisters try and fight their brother while she's here in 1921. Next slide. And this is an example. This is now in the BC Museum collection, just obtained last year from a family collection. This is the kind of decorative work she did, transforming ordinary everyday objects into, I think, quite exquisite works. So she painted these trays a lot while she was in England as well. And she, during the Second World War in particular, she painted them for the Red Cross, and the Red Cross sold them as fundraisers. So there are many, many objects that ended up sold throughout London during the war that were Sophie's work that she did, for the war effort. Next slide. Again, just to give you an idea of the kinds of mysteries, like there's this plaster bust of a woman, and the plaster bust is depicted in a painting that the art gallery has in its collection. The plaster bust seems to have followed her from house to house over the years. I'm not sure. I have an idea who it is, but you know, what happened to it? It's a lovely piece. Did Sophie create it? Was it created by someone she knew? She knew Rodin, which I think is amazing. But I think it predates her her relationship or her friendship with him. So yeah, so I'm spending a lot of time enlarging sections of photographs of the interiors of her studios and her home to try and see what I can see that is a clue for more research and for finding paintings. Next slide. And there, in her glory book, there are all these old sort of black and white photographs of her paintings, the paintings that are not known where they are. This painting was called Tarring the Ropes. It was done in 1898. It was exhibited at an international exposition in Louisiana in 1900. One of 3 Canadian artists exhibiting in that show. Maybe it was sold then, I don't know, but there are all of these images of the paintings that I'm now able to, you know, to work with these little clippings and recognize and have a picture to go with the name and the title of the painting. So it's, I'd love to find these many paintings. Next slide. And here's a couple more pictures of sections of her different studios. There's the Bibby painting, and you may also recognize on the lower left it's a painting, I think it's called An Unidentified Girl. It's in the art gallery's collection as well. The painting above it is an interior, and it's called The Interior of an Irish Cottage, and it's in the collection of the BC Archives. And this, there's a brass tray just to the right of the Bibby portrait that appears in so many paintings. So it was something that she treasured, that she picked up on her many travels, and all the knickknacks, all of that sort of thing. You know, it's all clues as to, you know, where she went and, you know, what was important to her. So next slide. So yeah, she doesn't come home when the Second World War hits. She lives in her flat in Kensington. She, you know, there was bombing all around her, chaos on her street. She, at one point, was out and a bomb hit her house. The whole back of her house disappeared, and she lived in 2 rooms for quite some time. She took in people who had lost their houses. She walked around the neighborhood when she was able and you know, tried assisting people. She was very brave and very, I don't know, some might say foolhardy to stay where she did. But then in 1950, she packs up and she decides it was time to come home, and she arrived just quite days actually before her youngest sister died, and she was able to see her older sister and to be with her older sister, and eventually Sophie, of course, dies in 1959, but she came home with all of these paintings and lots of furniture and lots of knickknacks, and she crammed it all into these apartments that she lived in. And she carried with her her sense of herself, all these things that were important to her, the paintings that she either was unable to sell or decided she didn't want to sell, the important ones that were you know, on the line at the Royal Academy and in the Paris Salon. Yeah, so it all came back to Victoria, and in the years before she died, there was a retrospective exhibit at the Vancouver Art Gallery. There was one at the Art Gallery here, and she left paintings. She gave paintings in the last years to the Art Gallery, and she left paintings in her will as well. So this is where our collection comes from. It comes directly from Sophie and augmented by family members who received paintings from Sophie during her lifetime or in her will, and then as they aged, they have subsequently donated them to the art gallery. So we have a hugely rich collection in Victoria, both at the BC Archives and at the art gallery. And my intention is to pull these paintings together with new paintings that I find, and have a show that really talks about this whole woman, her whole career, and the complexity that is life, that complicates a direct trajectory as an artist. And that's it for me. Thank you.